Why do they call him the Act Man? Is it because he's just acting? Is it because he's not actually a gamer? Is it because he makes no actual points in regards to high quality content, the best developers in the industry, like being a real serious gaming enthusiast? Is it possible he's just a grifter? Is it a fathomable idea, concept to you all that maybe the Act Man is not all that much of a reliable source of information when it comes to video games? Now, I've talked about this guy before, when it comes to when it came to the whole Elden Ring thing. I I was very upset with how religiously YouTubers defended Elden Ring when it first came out. They were calling it one of the best games of the year, one of the best games ever made, a huge innovation when it came to Dark Souls, when in actuality, it was just more of the same thing. It was not all that impressive, it was not all that big of a deal, but a lot of YouTubers caused a lot of problems for other people who didn't like the game by going after them, calling them ridiculous, saying their criticisms of the title were unwarranted, and this was one of the best games ever made. Like, From Software has never put out a bad game. Elden Ring is a perfect title, and if you don't like it, you're just a pleb. Even if you're the sort of person who plays much harder games on much better hardware on a regular basis, like myself, right? So the Actman is one of those people, right, who constantly defends every AAA release that comes out, right? I'm aware he also shilled for Baldur's Gate 3. I'm aware that he's shilling now for Starfield, and it's actually Starfield that led me to making this video, to talking about this, because this is an interesting situation in which the general gaming public, those of us who are, looking out for woke content and are calling out games for being woke and addressing what wokeness actually is, right? Those of us who are being watchdogs for the industry, emphasizing how ridiculous things have gotten when it comes to this kind of content in our favorite video games. Those of us who got angry at the pronouns, rightfully so, and are going through the game and realizing that there's more and more woke content from characters who clearly aren't French to females who are clones of male characters. Like, there's all kinds of things. People like the Act Man don't want to admit that games are woke, and they are going out of their way to try and downplay the woke elements in games like Baldur's Gate 3, in Starfield, and I'm sure in countless other projects that have surfaced over the years. Final Fantasy 16, I think, is a good example. Diablo 4, Street Fighter 6. Like, nobody is actually talking about all the very prominent woke aspects in these games. Mortal Kombat 11, Diablo, I'm sure Mortal Kombat 1 will have some woke elements. It's a major reason why I'm not buying the game, right? Because Mortal Kombat has shown to me that it is a woke franchise now, and I will not have anything to do with it, right? I'm just one person, but I am a hardcore fan of the franchise, and I am distancing myself for this reason. It's not really that hard to do to simply not buy woke products, and it's becoming a known phenomenon that a product being considered woke drives away the vast majority of consumers. So what we're seeing now with the Act Man, with Angry Joe, with Ryutech USA, with countless other left-wing shills, they're coming out trying to say, oh no, pronouns aren't woke. Everyone has pronouns. Starfield isn't woke. Baldur's Gate 3 isn't woke. It just has a lot of sex options. Oh man, they'll do everything they possibly can. Everything to try and present this narrative that wokeness is normal, that it's acceptable, that it's not really a thing. They'll pull any trick, make any lie, make any justification, come up with any kind of excuse to try and convince you that these products are still worth supporting in current year, right? That these games aren't declining in quality, that the graphics aren't getting worse and the gameplay is getting worse, and that Todd didn't lie going into the product. There are all these obvious examples as to everything wrong with Starfield. This was obvious even before release, but these guys were making excuses. They were talking down to people like me, people who were openly criticizing Skyrim, who have been criticizing Skyrim for like over a decade for their woke aspects, like for their terrible game design decisions, and just being a poorly run company in general, right? It isn't a new thing to come out and say Todd lied about this product, right? It isn't a new thing at all, and yet we're seeing time and time again people like the Act Man going to bat for these companies, doing everything they possibly can to say that like these companies are great. We need to support them. Like we need to keep getting this kind of content. We need to keep showing them that we want these good AAA games. But here's the thing that isn't actually true because nobody in the current year actually likes these AAA games. And there are a handful of examples of when this like becomes undeniable. Like Saints Row 2022 is like the most blatant example that people are talking about. But like I think that extends to a lot of different products. Stuff like Forspoken, stuff like Final Fantasy 16, stuff like Diablo 4, Overwatch 2. Like there are all these examples of these big high profile titles in these big high profile games from these high profile companies failing because of woke aspects. It shocked me when like I noticed on Steam that like Guilty Gear Strive, despite being like the last major fighting game to come out, before Street Fighter 6, right? Like that game has tanked in popularity, right? Like you could go on there right now and see just how few people are actually playing that online right now. And a big reason for that is because of Daisuke's autism in regards to like unnaturally trying to retcon Bridget into being a something he wasn't, right? Like I've seen examples of this in like Japanese interviews where like he unnaturally keeps referring to Bridget as a woman, right? Like in ways that like no Japanese person would. Like he is trying to emphasize this fact, well, this alleged fact that Bridget is a woman now, and of course fans aren't happy with it, and of course like it is gradually leading people to like disavow the franchise, disavow the creator, disavow like Arc System Works in general, and it's not impacting their financials yet. But like you have to keep in mind, like Skyrim introduced like gay marriage in 2011. It wasn't until like Fallout 4 and 76 that we finally started seeing like cracks, in like the system, right? The Last of Us came out, made Ellie a lesbian retroactively in DLC, and then like Last of Us 2 parts that comes out and it like ruins the entire PlayStation, right? Wokeness is a disease that ruins products, and like nobody wants to support it. Nobody wants anything to do with it. And like the instant a product is considered woke, which is a real thing, by the way, I keep hearing people say that like wokeness doesn't really mean anything when it does. It means like pushing a far left, like extremist liberal agenda, like using entertainment products. And it's not that difficult to figure out, guys. But like, the instant that like a franchise or a company or a console manufacturer is considered woke, like immediately people start fleeing. And it is we are seeing like major changes in the way that like products are perceived purely because of the backlash of this thing. Like it's not just Bud Light, it's everywhere. Disney, I would argue, like the big reason they're failing right now, the big reason I will never go to Disney, like, is because of what they've done politically speaking, like how they've handled the whole woke thing and how they've produced their movies and handled their parks and their shows and like everything that's happened. Like Disney has become a complete disaster because it's tried pushing wokeness over making things that people actually want. And that's true for a lot of these companies. But like we're reaching the point where more and more people are starting to disavow entire brands because of this stuff, right? And it is only going to accumulate from here. It is only going to get worse. It is going to be like less and less likely that like these these corporations are going to be able to like continue manipulating people into like giving money for their products, right? And what's more, I think more and more people are starting to speak out against the YouTubers who consistently deny that there's a problem here. The Act-Man is the example we're going to hear with this specific thing with like Starfield, but like I think this can also be said for people like Angry Joe, right? Like how he rages and seethes at people for being upset over like race swapping April O'Neil, but then will like turn around and get angry at like Supergirl being similarly race swapped. Like it's hypocritical, it's stupid, and it isn't something that can be sustained long term, right? It is already collapsing. Go woke, go broke is absolutely a real thing, and we're seeing this happen in real time over and over and over again. It isn't an outlier. Like, more and more people are getting fed up with this kind of thing, and I think this is going to be a major reason why, at the very least, Starfield will not outperform Starfield. Right? Starfield will not outperform Skyrim. Right? Like, I fully expect that at this point. Like, I think this game is considered to be rather underwhelming compared to Skyrim. I think this game will do moderately well. I don't know if it'll like win any awards. Not that those matter. Like, I don't know how much it's gonna sell, but I do think at the very least it isn't gonna become the phenomenon that Skyrim has. And a big reason for that is because of the lack of quality control and the lack of respect for the players. And that is going to continue degrading the Bethesda brand and turning more and more people against them and against Xbox and against like Western gaming in general. Like, this is something that more and more people are learning to deal with. Like, any way you can. And the best way to not support these kind of entertainment brands, don't give them money. Don't support Starfield. Don't support Mortal Kombat 1. Don't support like anything like this. Don't support Xbox Game Pass. Like, if you see woke content, if a game becomes woke, just don't buy it. And then at the end of the day, you, the actual consumer, dictate what gets made and what happens. Like, we are at the point now where these people can no longer just subtly introduce their propaganda. Everyone is aware of it, whether you're like in favor of it or not. Like, everyone is aware of it on some level, and it is going to get more and more ridiculous throughout the next decade. And I really have to wonder, just it does kind of feel like we're kind of on the downturn now. It feels like more and more people are starting to like most of these companies are a lot of these companies are going broke, and a lot of these franchises are bombing, and people are pushing back against these things more. Like, it's becoming more publicly known that they're doing this, and um, it's going to get worse from here. And as it gets worse, there's going to be more and more pushback, and of course, we are going to see the moment when it all comes crashing down. Someone is just going to come out, be anti-woke, and that person is going to be like considered the savior of the entertainment industry. Like, oh man, how who could have thought that people would support a product that they actually want to support, that's actually enjoyable, that's actually interesting. Like, it's remarkable to it could be anyone in this day and age. Like, it like the big publishers are no longer like the uh, the guaranteed source of income that they used to be. Like, these companies are collapsing. They're becoming less and less relevant all the time. And I think that no longer can we expect to see this kind of nonsense being pushed with no opposition. Like, it is insane to me how many people have like sworn off Starfield simply for being woke, right? Not necessarily because they didn't like the game or Bethesda or anything. Like, I have seen people like condemn Starfield specifically for this aspect, and that is something I'm very happy to see. Like, this is something that is very important and should be talked about more. Never support woke products like Starfield.